This is for you.
All right. Thank you. See you guys.
You have to kill her. She betrayed you. She doesn't love you. Yes, she does. She does love me. She does.
In the quiet suburbs, author Mary and her husband Tom Morrison live in a big mansion with their young twins. After publishing her last book, which became a huge success, Mary decided to focus on starting a family and happily dedicated her full time to staying at home and taking care of her kids, while Tom became the sole breadwinner. One afternoon, Mary finishes up her chores and prepares for her meeting with her old publisher, Kiyoki, who has scheduled to come to her house to discuss an urgent matter. Kiyoki shows up with his colleague Darlene, and during the meeting, the publishers tell her how much their firm is struggling, ask her to write one more book, and offer to pay her $2 million for it. Because Mary lives a very comfortable and financially stable life, she isn't tempted by the offer and declines, as she believes taking this project on would take her away from the precious time she spends with the kids. Later that night, Tom returns from work as Mary prepares dinner for the family, stumbles upon the offer, and is flabbergasted by the staggering amount of money. Tom asks his wife to take the offer, and regretfully reveals that he has lost the majority of their assets in a bad financial investment. Mary is furious at Tom for not consulting her when he makes financial decisions, but hesitatingly realizes that she may not have a choice but to take Kiyoki's offer. A few days later, Mary and her therapist Elaine hang out at their gym, and Mary updates her on the offer she received. Mary also shares that she has become a completely different person. She can't recognize when she writes, and that it will be too much for the kids to handle. Elaine waves Mary's concern away and fiercely encourages her to start writing. Elaine then suggests that Mary should get a full-time nanny so that she can focus on the book, and gives her contact information for a high-end nanny service provider called Huntsman Enterprise. Full of doubt, Mary visits the Huntsman Enterprise and is somehow convinced to hold interviews for the available nannies at her house to see if they can match her high standard of care. A few days later, a few girls come to the Morrisons' house for the interview, but they all fail to impress the doting mother. As Mary gives up on her search and informs Tom of the situation, a timid girl named Grace arrives for her interview. During the interview, Mary and Grace bond over their mutual love of books. Moments later, the kids return from school, and Mary is happy to see Grace getting along with them. Grace then becomes overjoyed when she learns that Mary is an author and offers her services to the Morrisons should they ever require it. Grace starts a few days later as Mary gets started on her book. One day, Elaine comes over to Mary's house and is utterly impressed by Grace and how well she takes care of the kids. Grace becomes a big part of the Morrisons' life. She looks after the kids well and leaves late each evening after she puts them to bed, which gives Mary and Tom valuable privacy to enjoy each other's company. To show her gratitude to Grace, Mary takes her bra shopping and later gives her access to her old closet, full of clothes she no longer wears, and allows her to take anything she likes. Mary then realizes that she has begun to think about the young nanny in a different sexual light, but tries to dismiss it as one of the unusual, strange things that happen when she writes. One day, during a meeting with her publishers, Mary is told to make strange twists and turns in her book and make an unexpected character out to be a killer. The publishers then encourage Mary to reach into her dark side, emphasizing that's when she's at her best as an author. Around the Morrisons' house, Grace continues to help out to the point the couples think she is too good to be true. A few days later, Grace volunteers to look after the kids while the Morrisons attend a charity fundraising dinner with Elaine and her husband Rick. During the dinner, Elaine's husband tells Mary how excited he is to read her upcoming book and how much he loved her last book, which was full of unexpected twists. He also adds that she should channel her dark side into writing the new book so that it can be as good as the last one. A couple of days later, Mary breaks through her writer's block. Feeling excited, she asks Grace to join her in celebrating. The women drink some wine, take a swim together, and dance around the house, after which Grace tells Mary how much the past few weeks meant to her, that she has no one else other than Mary and her family, and deeply thanks her for everything. In the next few weeks, Mary shuts herself in her writer's room and frantically gets to work, planning the plots of her book thoroughly as the ideas flow through her. One morning, Grace prepares the kids for school and accompanies Tom as he drives them to school. Elaine sees Grace with Tom at the school, gets a bad feeling, and calls Mary to inform her about it, but gets no response as Mary has turned off her phone. Elsewhere, Tom and Grace go to breakfast and spend the day together. Tom notices a change in Grace and asks her how the drastic change in a mature attitude came about, but gets no explanation. 3 weeks later, Mary submitted her first draft. To relax and get her mind off work, she takes Grace on a bike ride through the woods behind her house to a beautiful, tranquil river. After riding around a bit, the ladies sit down to have a picnic and share some wine. Mary thanks Grace for getting her through her first draft and tells her that she couldn't have done it without her. After spending the afternoon together, the ladies prepare to return, but are shocked to find their bike tires slashed. Mary tries to call Tom, but the call doesn't connect. Hence, Mary and Grace are forced to walk back, reach the house after the sun sets, and find Tom and Elaine deeply worried about them. Elaine takes Grace aside and shares her suspicions of Tom and Grace. Mary defends both Tom and Grace, turns the accusation back on Elaine, questions what she's doing at her house at such a late hour, and accuses her of having feelings for Tom. Elaine doesn't want the argument to escalate. She tells Mary that she loves her and wants only the best for her. Elaine promises to talk to her about everything she and Tom were discussing at a more private time and leaves. Later that night, Tom takes the kids out for a walk, while Grace and Mary stay home and prepare dinner. Grace uses this time to make sexual advances towards Mary, but is interrupted by the sudden return of Tom and the kids. Mary is shocked to be almost caught in a vulnerable state, declares that she's not feeling well, and goes to lie down. Tom helps Mary to their bedroom and returns to help Grace finish preparing dinner. As she sleeps, Mary has a vivid dream. She hears strange sounds and follows them to check what's going on. To her utter shock, she sees Grace, dressed in provocative lingerie, smoking her cigar, and getting intimate with Tom. Mary faints from the shock and hears Grace assuring Tom that Mary won't remember any of it before being taken back to bed. Mary wakes up a few minutes later, tries to shake off the nightmare, and goes to the living room to find the kids, Tom and Grace, preparing to sit for dinner. Everyone's glad that Mary's feeling better and has joined them for dinner, but as soon as she sits down, she starts becoming hysterical and accuses Grace of having an affair with Tom. After a few minutes of ranting, Mary sees the fear in her kids' eyes caused by her meltdown, apologizes to them, and tells them that when she writes, things become so vivid in her mind that she has a hard time differentiating between reality and the imaginary world. Later in the night, Mary accuses Tom of putting her under this stress by betraying her and making bad financial choices. Tom lovingly apologizes to her, comforts her, and encourages her to stay strong as she is almost finished with the book. The couple retire for the night. Mary wakes up around 1 a.m., walks out to her writer's room to have a smoke, and wanders around the house. Tom wakes up, bewildered where his wife has gone at that time of the night, but falls back asleep before he can find out. The next day, on the Morrisons' 10th anniversary, the couple wakes up early and makes a plan to celebrate that night. Later that day, Mary calls Huntsman Enterprise to ask why they still haven't cashed the check she sent them for Grace's services, but is horrified to learn that they don't have a nanny named Grace. Mary immediately rushes to the local library she knows Grace frequents to learn about her nanny, while frantically calling Elaine to inform her of the new developments. When she fails to hear from Elaine, Mary goes to her apartment and is terrified to find her stabbed to death by a pair of scissors. She screams in shock and calls 911. The police come and, after securing the crime scene, add to her shock by labeling her the prime suspect and taking her to the station, where they explain her fingerprints have been found on the murder weapon, point out the similarity of the murder scene with the one in her manuscript, and show her a video of a woman wearing a long coat, a scarf, and sunglasses, leaving Elaine's apartment a little after 1 a.m., who they believe to be her. Tom gets to the station and stops the interrogation. He is very supportive of his wife, but asks her where she was last night at 1 a.m. and why it took her so long to return. He also adds that the police have found a Swiss knife with a matching blade to the one that slashed the bike tires in their garage with her fingerprint all over it. Overwhelmed, Mary runs out of the station and goes searching for Grace's aunt to find out more about her. She finds the aunt and has a strange interaction with her. The aunt then reveals that Grace is one of the children found imprisoned and abused by their parents a few years back. She adds that after Grace and her siblings were rescued, Grace had come to live with her before getting a cleaning job at a gym and moving out. It's then revealed that Grace had overheard Mary and Elaine's conversation at the gym and sought out Mary privately and applied for the job. Mary drives to her house while calling Tom to warn him about Grace, but can't connect. Meanwhile, in the house, Grace tries to seduce Tom, and when she fails, stabs him. When Mary arrives, Grace goes back to her shy self and calls for help for Tom. However, Grace could no longer contain the other personality inside her named Margaret, who is aggressive, angry, and just a polar opposite of the introverted Grace. Grace flips between the two personalities as she advances on the couple with a knife in hand. She chases Mary and tries to strangle her, but Mary uses all her might to knock her out. 1 year later, the Morrisons are all doing well and taking time out to spend some quality time together. Mary takes a manuscript of her now finished and best-selling book and leaves it on Elaine's grave as a show of her gratitude for encouraging her to write it. The movie ends as Mary goes to visit Grace in a mental institution, and after spending some time with her ex-nanny, in a horrific turn of events, the same woman seen on Elaine's apartment surveillance video, wearing a long coat, scarf, and eyeglasses, is seen leaving the hospital. And with that, the movie ends. I hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for amazing videos. See you in the next one.